Surely you don't mean it. The man was respectful but intense. You don't mean that life conquers death. You're going against science, medicine, the fact of human mortality. We all die. It's an argument you can't win. He has a point. I've been sparring with him for years, since he was a teenager in a church I formerly served. Now he's a doctor who does daily battle with formidable epidemiological foes. He's delivered bad news at too many bedsides to be easily convinced by religious platitudes. And he's not the only one. Every one of us is touched by the hard reality of death. We grieve the loss of loved ones and the hole their absence creates. The daily news cries out with waning hope for peace on earth, goodwill to all. We also understand the tendency to ignore, deny, and shield ourselves from that reality. Even though we are 2 millennia past that death in Palestine, we can surely resonate with the reactions of the women who came to Jesus' grave early on Sunday morning. They came to do what was right and expected to honor their beloved friend and teacher, anoint his lifeless body with spices and oils, then wrap the shroud tightly around him, not unlike the way his mother had swaddled him as a newborn. It was work they could not do by law until the Sabbath was over. And so the women waited till the dawn of the next day. Duty, not faith, drove them. Even in heartbreak, you make yourself do what you have to do. Hear then the first Easter proclamation from the Gospel according to Mark in the 16th chapter at the first verse. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so they might go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. "Do not be alarmed," he said to them. "You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth. He is not here. Look, there is the place where they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. From the moment the women see that the large stone sealing the tomb has been rolled back, tension mounts. Puzzlement turns to alarm as they enter the cave, where a heavenly messenger calmly reports that Jesus is risen, and they'll see him again soon. Amazement becomes sheer terror as this news sinks in. What? This goes against everything we know to be true and real. We saw him breathe his last. The dead stay dead. In the beginning, God created sun, moon, and stars, earth, wind, and fire, birds of the air, fish of the sea, and the great evolutionary origin of every species under heaven, including human beings. In the beginning, God created. Look, look, look. It is very good. And on the seventh day, God rested. And that's a good thing, because the people God made flunked resting. Right from the start, they excelled in creating havoc, making wars, tearing down the beautiful and true, greedily grasping more and more for themselves alone. Oh, it's not that they weren't also inventive and curious, kind and compassionate, forming families and communities that helped organize and support them. It's just that the forces of destruction seemed always to have the upper hand. And there was no getting around the fact that all roads, no matter how excellent and worthy, led to the grave. The end. In Jesus' tomb, God once again took up the work of creator. In his grave, God created. And so dawned the 8th day of creation. This phrase was one of the ways the early church referred to Sunday, to distinguish it from the Sabbath day of rest and to celebrate the utterly new thing God had done. Raised the dead, overcome the finality of the grave with new life. The 8th day of creation, a second chance for the beloved first creation. Friends, the good news of Easter is good only because it is new and unique. Easter is not the same as springtime and the earth's annual renewal, miraculous as that sometimes seems. The green shoots of carrot tops and spinach in my brother's garden make my heart rejoice. But that is plant biology, not resurrection. Maybe the closest metaphor in the natural world to describe the indescribable is the life cycle of a caterpillar, spinning its cocoon, hanging from a leaf, and then breaking forth as a gorgeous butterfly. Nothing from its former life appears to remain. The butterfly gracing our sanctuary this morning was created by the congregation, painting on separate canvases during the past 6 weeks. It was a mystery because you didn't know the whole plan or just what impact your little brushstroke would have. Today it is revealed as a new creation. Easter is illogical, unnatural, and completely inconsistent with everything we know of reality. When God raised Jesus from the dead, God created a new reality with skill, artistry, infinite patience, and glory beyond imagining. God broke the rules, messed around with the orderly arrangement of things to make something entirely original. In the beginning, God created. In the end, God created. And in between, God is still creating. A divine artist working with ordinary material, flawed human flesh, frail mortal beings. And I have to wonder whether this was the foundation-shaking, earth-shattering truth that frightened those women into silence. How could they explain it or even begin to describe it? And who would possibly believe them? In many ways, friends, these questions are the same ones the church asks as we proclaim this new reality in the face of old problems. If Jesus Christ is risen today, why does violence still reign? If love conquers all, why are we still lonely? Why do we experience the breakup of relationships, bitter estrangement from friends, and the sorrow of the last goodbye? If Jesus Christ lives and rules, why are we still so afraid? Recently, I was moved by a creative enterprise that suggests a response to these questions. The 12, a new rock musical playing at the Denver Center for the Performing Arts, places the disciples, now without Judas, who betrayed Jesus, Mary, Jesus' mother, and Mary Magdalene, in the upper room immediately following the crucifixion. The opening scenes are chaotic as they hide for fear of a similar fate as their teacher. They're ashamed, angry, and disappointed because the death of Jesus also meant the death of his vision, a kingdom ruled by love. Each of them had answered Jesus' compelling invitation to follow me. And now they must struggle to understand why and for what purpose. There's Simon the revolutionary, for whom taking up the sword is logical. Matt the tax collector, calculating the odds. John and James always ready to duke it out. Mary, a woman forced to support herself through prostitution, whom Jesus accepted and did not reject. And Tom, the philosopher, who needed hard evidence. Mother Mary keeps asking, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" The way ahead does not come easily. They argue and doubt and theorize. They recall their teacher's words and actions. In one particularly moving scene, Tom has demanded proof by placing his fingers in Jesus' scars until he realizes that it was Jesus who had placed a healing hand on Tom's scars. Gradually, they come to a new place, ready to rise up as Jesus did and commit together to the new reality of love. Though obviously an imaginative portrayal, I think something like this must have happened. Mark's Easter proclamation ends with the women's silence. But eventually they had to share the news, or else we wouldn't be here worshiping a living God 2,000 years later. If Jesus' resurrection represents an entirely new thing, then it falls to each succeeding generation to decide what we're going to do with it. Whether we are going to shape our perspective, our actions, our choices according to its truth. The church, and this church, responds by addressing the Good Friday conditions of our community with the power of resurrection. Can we break the cycle of entrenched poverty through ministries that enlarge human capacity? New Genesis provides men and women with resources to do so and moves them from homelessness to independence with dignity, accountability, and support. Can we intervene in the lives of children to create better and more hopeful outcomes to their young and vulnerable lives? Central Visitation Program, which reunites children with a parent for supervised visits, sounds a resounding yes. Recently, our Children and Family Ministries Director, Stephanie Fritz, and Brad Wood, who directs Central Visitation Program, received a grant as part of a citywide initiative to protect and nurture children, to raise awareness of abuse and neglect under our noses, and widen our community's arms to support families. This church invests time, energy, and financial resources in enterprises that proclaim God's victory over death, even when others say it's impossible. So maybe the butterfly is an apt symbol for resurrection after all, as we remember the paradox expressed by the late poet Maya Angelou. We delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it has gone through to achieve that beauty. Friends, God invites us to experience resurrection as we, like those frightened women and doubting disciples, find the courage to move forward, to live into a new reality where good triumphs over wrong and love has the last word. Now, I will admit to you, it is an argument we cannot win, but we don't have to. God already won it when God raised Jesus from the dead. Christ is alive. We are alive. Hope is born on the 8th day of creation. Now let's decide what we're going to do on all the days after that. Amen.